Welcome to What Are They Thinking, a podcast by the Herbert Institute at Utah Valley University, where civic engagement comes to life.
Well, Senators, we are so grateful to have you here with the Herbert Institute for Public Policy at Utah Valley University. In the wake of the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk on our campus 2 months ago, we appreciate your willingness to come and discuss and model civil dialogue. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
And with that, we'll jump right in. In the aftermath of political violence, some people want to blame a whole political party for the actions of a few violent individuals. How do you support victims of violence without condemning a whole political party?
Well, this issue of political violence is rather personal for me. My wife, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, was shot in the head in 2011 doing something rather similar to what Charlie Kirk was doing. Meeting with people, listening to them, and having a discussion with them about, what's important to them. And guy shows up with a gun and kills 6 people, injures 12 others. Happened very quickly. And that kind of violence is destructive to our democracy. And it's not one-sided. It's something we've seen over years. And recently, the amount of political violence that we've seen in this country has gone up. Melissa Hortman and her husband were murdered in their home. Josh Shapiro, his home was, there was arson to try to kill him. Donald Trump had 2 attempts on his life. And I think it's fair to say that there are reasons that we're seeing this. We've become a more divided country and more politicized and polarized, than ever before. And I think it's important that we take actions like this. But there are other things we can do to try to bring down the temperature and address some of the core issues on why this happens.
Yeah, it's near impossible to duplicate the life experiences that you've had, Senator. So I'm really, really grateful that you would take the time to come to Utah, my backyard. My home's not far from here. It's just a huge compliment to me, to the university, and to the state that you would come. So thank you. And bringing that wealth of experience that you have on this issue. I would also point out, look, anybody that wants to point at a political party is only adding to the problem. This is a human problem. And I think we also too frequently look to Washington, D.C. or some other place to fix this problem. Yes, we have our responsibility, but so does every individual. And I think this is a really good time here in Utah where we just have had this terrible situation for each one of us to ask ourselves, how we're treating our neighbor, how we're treating other students. And are we adding to this environment, or are we doing just a little bit every day to make it better?
Yeah, I love the 1% principle where it's your 1% better every single day.
Sure.
And you being here really models that. In fact, I think we're taking more than 1% today. I think we're taking many percents, 100% better today with you being here. Senator Kelly, after Gabby's shooting, your lives changed forever. Some people might become bitter by that experience. What is your recipe for moving forward with compassion instead of resentment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I also often get asked about forgiveness and about how do I, think about this guy that did that on that day, years and years later. And, I listen to my wife a lot about this, and she's all about moving ahead and trying to get past what happened to her. Just like UVU, Gabby doesn't want that shooting to define her in her life. And I don't think this shooting that happened here has to define this university. And this university is much more than that. Tucson, Arizona is much more than what happened to Gabby Giffords on January 8th of 2011. So, you got to find ways to, take something that was so horrific that happened, on that day. And it's only been a couple months now. That's kind of hard to, I was talking to somebody about this just the other day. It was only a couple months ago that he got shot here. But you got to figure out ways to, move beyond it, recognize that this is something that happened here, but not let that day define this university.
I love that. Thank you. And Senator Curtis, like you said, this is your backyard. How do you process political tension or violence so close to home? And what should be done to prevent and address political violence here?
Well, I think if we're honest, one of the reasons this impacted us in such a dramatic way is we would have all said this can never happen, right, in Utah Valley. This is a place where you have a hard time walking down the street, not saying hi to somebody. This is a place where if you leave your trash cans out, people bring them in, and they probably didn't lock their door, right? And for that to happen here is just this huge wake-up call that if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere. And then we have to ask ourselves really hard questions. Like, we have some very strong opinions about social media. Spencer Cox called it a cancer that drives us to hate and drives us to division, and I think he's right. And so I think we have to look there. I think we have to look in our homes. I think we have to look at our own personal behavior. And I don't think we're going to break out of this cycle until we really do kind of an all-hands-on approach to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the social media issue is a huge problem. I mean, here you have all the tech companies tried and maybe were initially somewhat successful in building applications on your phone that brought people together to make connections with your old high school friends, and people could communicate in a rather positive way. And then over time, they realized that was not the best business model. The best business model was to keep you engaged on your phone, almost regardless of what they had to show you, to keep you scrolling so they can then put ads in there and generate more revenue.
Definitely. I love the principle of being a conscious consumer of media, and I really think that starts in our families and in our homes, and teaching, our friends and our kids to be conscious consumers and to not just blindly accept everything, but to challenge and to think, and to also use social media in moderation as well.
I think that's a good point. Like, people should be thinking about it. I wonder why they're sending me, why are they showing me these things?
And why is it free, right?
Yeah.
What's going on? And then I think part of the problem too is no matter how alert a consumer is, the deviousness of some of these algorithms is like putting fentanyl in candy bars in the store, right? So you can be a careful consumer, but it's laced with this poison, and that's another thing that we're exploring by way of legislation that we'll be talking about today. We have to make sure that those that are responsible for putting this content out are liable for the product that they're putting out.
Do you want to hear something really crazy? I've
do.
started to ask this question recently.
Oh, I know what the
About
question is, and
I've started to ask this. Who has kids here? Anybody? You have kids? Would you rather your kids, when they get of teenagers, would you rather them use social media or cigarettes? You had to think about it for a second, right? And I've got, so far, about 75% of the people have told me cigarettes.
Wow.
That's something. Start asking people that question.
Yeah. So in speaking about civility and respectful dialogue, what role do you think UVU should play in teaching civility and respectful dialogue?
Well, we agree on stuff, and there's stuff we disagree on, but we're still friends. You can disagree with somebody and still be friendly. I mean, people do that in their families. We do that in the United States Senate. We should be able to do that as a society, to disagree but not be disagreeable.
So I think UVU has a test coming, right? The whole Charlie Kirk situation, clearly we all think it was terrible, but there are some people that are unhappy with the things that he said. And I think UVU will be watched literally by the entire world in how they respond to this. So when you ask what UVU can do, I think you do carry a tremendous responsibility to do exactly what he just said and what we try to do in the Senate. And if we're honest, we're not perfect every time, and perhaps some of our colleagues are less perfect some of the times. But this is the real challenge, and I think it starts with every one of us. I think you need to wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and say, am I going to be a part of this, or am I going to be part of the solution?
And on the Charlie Kirk stuff, I mean, most of his positions on issues I disagreed with. But one thing I agreed with and would fight to defend, and go to war over is his right to be there talking about the issues that he cared about. And he obviously cared about these issues. I mean, he devoted his whole life to this. And he has every right to be there and speaking about it. And under no circumstance should somebody try to use force to silence a person who is exercising their First Amendment constitutional rights.
Senator Kelly's also served in the military. You have gone, right, in essence, to war
Yeah.
for this and would, and as we all would, to protect what we have here.
So as we move forward throughout the day in your speaking event, what is the one thing that you want the students listening to come away with? And what message would you share with students that have been directly impacted by the assassination of Charlie Kirk? We'll start with you, Senator Curtis.
Listen, I think we have a lot of goals for today, but one of them is to see two of us sit in front of you, different political parties, different political philosophies. He wears black shoes, I wear brown shoes, right? And yet, I don't think there's a topic that you could throw at us, and we'll have a lot of them thrown at us today, where either one of us would somehow impugn the character of the other because their opinion would be different. And I think we need to start having conversations and respecting what you've experienced in your life with Gabby. It's so amazing, and I have not experienced something like that in my life. I have to respect that experience in his life, and that you're going to see some things differently than I am. And every day in the Senate, I come across people that just have very, very different backgrounds and experiences. And if I, for 1 minute, impugn that they are a bad person because they see things differently than I do, I've committed, in my opinion, a tremendous flaw, and the flaw is mine, not theirs.
Well, people, looking at the United States Congress from the outside often think that Democrats and Republicans hate each other. I've heard that from people. Like, how could you ever talk to that person? And we've got really good and strong relationships, and we're friends. And I think it's important to model that behavior so people see it. And I think we need to do more of that so they understand that we can, disagree on tax policy or gun rights or so many different things, but we're still friends, and we, understand that we have a political system that respects different opinions, and sometimes we can work together, to pass legislation, we all agree about, and other times, one party will kind of go it alone on things, and then there's the consequences of an election, that this is our system. And I worry that, the public often looks at us and doesn't see the full picture.
What would you say to somebody what advice would you give to a student who wants to see the full picture? Where would you tell them to start?
Your podcast.
Exactly. Let me tell you where they shouldn't start. Social media. Right? Like, if they're getting their news from social media, they need to really rethink that. And I think we both probably have sources that we go to that we trust and that are reliable, and it's not just one source. But I think too much of the problem is a lot of students you have to admit, are waking up and looking at their social media feed and taking it for, there's the truth, and they need to go deeper than that.
You should read the newspaper. That's a good place to start.
The actual physical,
read the paper.
Ink on your fingers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And in conclusion, what gives you hope about the next generation of leaders?
Well, I'm incredibly optimistic about our country and hopeful about the future. We have the most generous people and innovative and smart, and we've got great colleges and universities and technical schools, and our economy, is generally, doing well. So it has its ups and downs, but I think I would, I have a granddaughter who's 4, and I'm so thankful that she's born here in the United States. And what gives me hope is that there are people that will show up to this event today. I don't know how many, but there will be people there in that room listening to us, and that gives me a lot of hope.
Thank you.
Look, we both get a chance to travel a lot, and I would say what gives me hope is the other things we see around the world. On our worst day, everybody still wants to be us.
That is very hopeful, and thank you so much for the messages of hope that you shared and the advice that you've given, and we're just so grateful that you would be here today.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.